All right, been looking forward to this conversation regarding learning disparities in Arizona and a bunch of other topics. Joining me in studio, first of all, is the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Horne. Thanks for being here. And Deputy Superintendent Margaret Dugan, thanks for being here, ma'am, as well. I know you wanted to make a statement, Mr. Superintendent, so the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Well, the question that you wanted to talk about is disparity in learning between Hispanic students and others. And I think that the reason for it is a number of school districts are violating an initiative that passed that said the students should be in structured English immersion. They're putting them what they call dual languages, a kind of bilingual education. And I'm going to say a few words in Spanish to illustrate my point. Estoy hablando en español para demostrar que muchos de sus oyentes no entenderán lo que estoy diciendo. Y eso es exactamente la situación en que ponen a los estudiantes bilingües, porque las clases bilingües no son eficaces para enseñarles inglés. Most of your audience didn't understand what I said, and that's the situation that we put these students in, because in bilingual education, they never really properly learn English. When I took office, the initiative had been in place for almost 3 years. My two predecessors had not enforced it. I was the first one to enforce it. At that time, bilingual education was, universal, and the number of kids who became proficient in English was a pathetic 4%. Proficient in 1 year was a pathetic 4%. At that rate, almost no one would ever become proficient. We instituted structured English immersion, and ultimately we got that up to 31%. At 31%, 3 or 4%, 3 or 4 years, they all become proficient. So we have proven that what is best for the students is structured English immersion and not bilingual education or dual language education. But we have people in the school districts who are ideological, and instead of thinking about the students' progress in academics, they're thinking about preserving traditional language and so on. Well, they can preserve the traditional language at home. I'm all in favor of learning more languages, including Spanish, once the student is proficient in English. But first, to succeed academically, the student must become proficient in English, and the way to do that is structured English immersion.
Well, Ms. Dugan, you were one of the authors of Prop 203 back in 2000. What was the idea behind this? Do you believe that it's effective? What is it people need to know about this? Because this has now become a thing with these numbers.
Right. I've been in education since the 70s, and bilingual education was always the methodology that the schools were using to teach students whose first language was not English, having them in bilingual education. Unfortunately, it's only Hispanics that they put in bilingual education or dual language. They believe every other immigrant that comes to this country can learn English. And to us, that was very insulting because I am Hispanic descent. I was speaking Spanish growing up as a child before I entered kindergarten. I'm one of 10 children, and we all were immersed in English when we started our schooling, and we all learned it very well, as did all of my cousins, which I have many of. So I believe that the first thing that a student should do and have given to that child is the fluency of English. And
it doesn't matter what age they come to this country when they come here. So and there is no difference if they come as a kindergarten student or as they come as an 8th grader. Learning English is easier at a younger age, and it's better for them long-term in education.
Right, and I was a high school English language learner teacher. I had students from all sorts of different parts of the world, different countries, Vietnam, Mexico, the Middle East, and they all learned English. And so it doesn't matter what age level, but you have to immerse them in English, and they learn it very quickly.
So for either one of you, 2 questions, and you can pick how you want to answer. First of all, the numbers, the report that we've seen says that there's a 23 percentage point difference in Hispanic students and white students in reading proficiency in 3rd grade, 24 percentage points in math ability at 8th grade. Are those numbers, in your opinion, accurate? And if they are accurate, what is the cause of it? Your mic's off.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I I haven't checked the numbers. I have no reason to contest them. But the cause of it is if they learned English quickly as they learn in structured English immersion, there's no reason they wouldn't learn just as well as everybody else.
Right.
Because there's no difference in intelligence by race. Everyone's
Right.
the same. So they could learn just the same as everybody else. But if you keep them in dual language or bilingual, and they don't learn English, it's no wonder that they don't do well, because they haven't learned the language that they need to learn in order to excel academically.
Is there a scenario where, let's say it's a Spanish-speaking student or a group of students, where, let's say in a math class, for them to learn math, if they were learning some of the word problems using Spanish, and it helps them be more proficient in math, is there a scenario where learning some things in Spanish is still better until they're proficient in English?
In my experience, no, not really. The students themselves have dictionaries that are translators, but the teachers that teach mathematics, and I did have my high school math teachers, but they wrote everything down on, for example, a word problem, and the students would read it and be able to translate in their own language and move on. So there's really not it's not necessary that the teachers or the students read their problem in Spanish first.
Or even in their whatever their native language
Whatever their
is.
native language. Like I said, I had kids from the Middle East, from Asia, and they all had their own dictionaries, and they worked to make sure they understood.
So what is the solution then? If these numbers are even close to accurate, is it that we are more robust and more emphatic in our English immersion? Is that really the key to this? Is it that simple?
It's that simple. If all the students are in English immersion, they learn English quickly. We've demonstrated that. And then they can do it just as well as everybody else. They have the same intelligence as anybody else. I'm in a lawsuit now. I'm suing districts that have dual language on the grounds that they're clearly violating the law. Frustrating thing for me is the Attorney General and the Governor are against me, and they should be upholding the law. They swear to uphold the law. Attorney General's job is to uphold the law, and they're flatly going against an initiative that was passed by over 60% of the voters.
So anecdotally, when I was very young, I grew up with a Cuban family. They were Cuban immigrants. They were Marielitos, and they all spoke Spanish. None of them spoke English, but the children went to the American public schools. This was in Southwest Florida. They were dedicated, the parents were dedicated to speaking Spanish in the home to keep their culture, but they demanded they speak English outside of the home so that they became proficient in English. And every one of them became very successful that way because it was demanded of them that they learn both languages. Is that the goal for, that they maintain the culture and the language in their home, but in public, you need to be able to be proficient in English?
That's up to the parents. But my parents were Polish immigrants. They spoke Polish at home. If I told them that spending half the day in Polish, they would think that was crazy. They expected me to excel in English.
Right. And I would say, from my background, my parents are the number one priority for them was to make sure that we became fluent in English. We spoke Spanish at home when we had grandparents or relatives over. But first and foremost, my parents both believed that if we were not successful in speaking English, we were not going to have a very good job when we were adults.
When you speak to families in largely Hispanic neighborhoods and schools that have a predominantly Hispanic population in the schools, are the parents on board with what you're saying? Is there pushback from the parents, or do the parents agree that their children need to speak English?
I would say when we were running the proposition, those were the people that came with us. They wanted their kids to speak English and learn it well.
How about now?
Even today.
Okay.
There are, some parents that have lost their Spanish, so they feel that maybe they want their children to acquire that. But we do have classes in Spanish, courses that kids can take at the high school or even at the elementary if they have those courses. But first and foremost, every Hispanic parent wants their child to be successful, and that is the language of commerce, and of success in this country and probably all over the world.
Yeah. Okay. Coming up, we have one more segment with the superintendent and with the deputy superintendent. We're going to talk about a couple of other things in education, this as well, but we're going to talk ESAs, teacher pay, and teacher retention. All that's coming up next. All right, we are back. Joining me in studio are both the superintendent of public instruction and the deputy superintendent of public instruction. And we are talking all things schools. I'd like to shift to a couple of very important topics. I'm going to read a headline, and I would love for you to comment on this. Homeschooling parents battle Horne over spending limits for Arizona vouchers. Where are we with the ESA program? Are the parents satisfied that are in the ESA programs? And how should taxpayers feel about the ESAs and oversight?
Yes, I think taxpayers should feel very good. My predecessor was against ESA. She went door to door to get petitions against them. And so she allowed anything. And that word would then get to Beth Lewis at SOS, which was against them.
Yep.
And then they would say, look how wasteful the program is. They're funding ski lift tickets, something like that. So when I took office, I established two principles. Number one, every expenditure has to be for a valid educational purpose. And number two, it has to be for reasonable cost according to market prices. Now my critics are saying I don't have the authority to do that the parents should get whatever they want. If I had used that, here's what I would have had to have funded: a $5,000 gold Rolex watch, a $24,000 golf simulator, over $1,000 fancy Mont Blanc pen. And believe it or not, we had somebody ask for a vasectomy testing kit, which obviously wasn't for the kids. If that had been the principle that my opponents are arguing for, it would have been big news. The public would have reacted, and it would have been a challenge to the sustainability of the ESA program. I'm a huge believer in the ESA program. I believe parents should be able to choose the school best for their children or any other method. And I believe I'm responsible for the sustainability of the program. So that's why I'm insisting on those principles. Every expenditure has to be a legitimate education purpose and a reasonable cost according to market prices, and that's what the battle is.
But how is the reimbursements? I know that's been a question for ESA parents, that because of the oversight, there has been a slower process in reimbursements, and a lot of these families are not able to front a lot of this money. They don't have the funds to do that,
right,
and it's taking a long time. How is that being addressed?
Right. Well, the truth is the opposite of that. The limits that we're trying to put in the handbooks eliminate the backlog, because the people who are doing the work can say, okay, what they $4,000 is the limit for a musical instrument. What they ask for is $3,000. They just approve it right away. The first year we had no problems with backlog. It was the second year we had problems with backlog because of three different developments: the growth of the program, and our personnel did not increase. Something that came down from the Attorney General that was irrational, that I'm fighting in court, and a law that said parents could use reimbursements for tuition, where they used to go through Class Wallet, our vendor. And so we had a huge backlog. It was a big problem. We have solved that backlog. There's no longer a backlog. And one of the elements of that is we have these rules of thumb where people can just approve things without having to wonder, well, is that a reasonable price or not?
One of the big issues I know you've talked about and your office has talked about very often is teacher retention and what a big issue it is. But there is a push at the Capitol over Prop 123 and the renewal of those dollars. Mm-hmm. But Republicans are saying there should be a focus on teacher pay. Where do you stand on that part of the issue? I know that's not 100% of the solution, but where does your office stand on that issue of Prop 123, but specifics in teacher pay enhancement?
Yes, we face a real crisis. When I give State of Education speeches at the legislature, I say we've got to take strong action to increase teacher pay, because right now we're losing more teachers from the profession than are coming into the profession. So if that were to continue, and we didn't take strong action, we could end up with zero teachers. You can imagine how the public would react to that. So I've been pushing very hard to give a good increase to our teachers through Prop 123, which doesn't involve increase of taxes. It comes from the land trust. And I'm hopeful that the legislature will do that, because we have a real crisis in losing so many teachers.
And as an educator, as long as you've been in education, let me ask you your perspective on this. I'm hearing from teachers that it's also about discipline in the classroom, not having the support of the administration, that if it's a discipline problem, the joke in elementary education is you send a kid to the office and they come back with a juice box and a snack, that there isn't the backup for discipline. And there's a fear there of lack of that. That's part of the reason teachers are leaving, but also professional development and a teacher becoming, they want that support of becoming better teachers. Isn't that a big part of teacher retention as well?
Absolutely. As a teacher for 13 years and many people that I know that are in the teaching field, if they are not supported on discipline, it becomes very disheartening for them to continue in this profession. As an administrator, you have to, first and foremost, support your teachers. They are the ones doing the hard work in the classrooms, and if they do not feel supported, they're going to leave the profession.
Well, and for either of you, at the elementary school level, it can be a nuisance if you don't have the support of the administration. But at the high school level, it can be dangerous. If you don't have the support of the administration where bad students are not allowed to be bad kids, that they're removed from the situation, it can become dangerous, can't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and these last two questions were bullseyes. I've been advocating very strongly that we need to create incentives for administrators to support our teachers. Lack of that support is given by teachers as number two as a reason for leaving. We survey when they leave. Number one is salaries. Number two is lack of support on discipline. And so I've had a bill in the legislature for 2 years that would create those incentives. Unfortunately, it did not pass, but I'm going to keep fighting for it, because if we don't support our teachers on discipline, it's going to be hard to raise academics because kids can't learn under that circumstance. And we lose a number of teachers just for that reason. You're absolutely right.
And it must be frustrating because of the autonomy of the schools and the school districts, where the administration kind of they get to make the choice. Is it legislation that forces them to cooperate, or does that make it more red tape and more paperwork than it does actually education?
To support your teachers on discipline matters?
If it's done legislatively where they're forced to do it.
I would believe that there will be teachers that will leave those schools that aren't being supported
Right.
when they know it's a legislative decision, and they would then feel that the administrators aren't supporting them, even though that is legislated for them to do. For me, as the principal of 10 years, I felt that was my number one priority in the schools, was to increase academic learning, and the only way you do that is to support your teachers in all discipline.
I had a teacher from Phoenix Union who wrote me that she told a student to do her work. She agrees with my philosophy, every instructional minute is precious. And the student said F you, but she didn't use the letter, she used the word.
Yeah.
So she called the administration, you ought to do something. And they said, use your social emotional learning. Well, that doesn't create any incentive against misbehavior. You have to have discipline. Actions have to have consequences. And I think that was very bad administration to treat a case like that.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming down. And as I've said to you many times, and you've been so gracious with your time, the door is always open. I think education is the number one issue for parents. Even if you don't have children in school, we understand giving these kids a chance. With the economy we have growing in Arizona, we need qualified people in the workplace, and it starts with the work that you do. So thank you both.